CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman joins us as well. Before we start, we have some breaking news on a joint statement from the U.S. and Russia. Willie, what more can you tell us about that?
Hey there, Mugo. Good to be with you. Well, this statement comes after negotiators, those technical negotiators, have been working in Saudi Arabia hour by hour to come to some type of consensus when it comes to the Black Sea to essentially stop the conflict there. Now, we do have a statement that comes from the U.S. and Russia, and also the U.S. and Ukraine, talking about both negotiations in separate statements. And the main part of it has to do with the Black Sea. And I want to read part of it here. It says the United States and Ukraine have agreed to ensure safe navigation, eliminate the use of force, and prevent the use of commercial vessels for military purposes in the Black Sea. There's also a statement from the U.S. Describing the U.S. and Russia negotiations as well, and it says basically the same thing: to eliminate the use of force and prevent the use of commercial vessels for military purposes in the Black Sea. That was the major sticking point here, was to stop those military incursions, to stop those attacks essentially in the naval, in the area, I should say, of the Black Sea. Part of this would, of course, include further moving towards a more lasting peace. That's what both statements lay out here. But this is, of course, a significant development following those negotiations. I'll note that we were supposed to get a statement earlier today at 4 a.m. From the U.S. and the Russians, and that didn't happen, in large part because the Russians wanted to see about how this meeting played out in Saudi Arabia. But this outline here on the outcomes of the U.S. Talks with both Russia and Ukraine is significant, and a significant step in moving towards peace between those two nations, Mugo.
Yeah, well, it definitely sounds like it. I also want to pivot now and ask you about that article from The Atlantic. Do we have any idea how the Trump administration plans to handle this? I know earlier today Trump has said he stands by Mike Waltz.
That's right. He said that in an interview with NBC News, that he stands by the national security advisor who apparently inadvertently added a journalist to this Signal text thread. We do also have a post from the press secretary. I think we can pull that up for our viewers, where she essentially talks about how no classified information was shared in this thread, but the White House and other White House and other officials, I should note, Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, have really put the journalist in this case on blast, Jeffrey Goldberg. And so there you see Carolyn Levitt's statement. It says Jeffrey Goldberg is a well known for his sensationalist spin. Here are the facts, and she goes on to lay out some of the things that the White House says. No war plans were discussed, no classified material being sent in this thread. Nonetheless, still sensitive information about potential U.S. strikes against the Houthis in Yemen before it played out. This journalist was able to get a hold of that information because he was on this thread. And so you saw it there in the hearing, the director of the CIA and the director of national intelligence being asked about this situation with this Signal chat thread. And in some instances, Tulsi Gabbard simply kind of deferring the question, not necessarily answering the question directly, but still nonetheless, the White House has verified the authenticity of this conversation. You heard from the CIA director himself, talked about that he was on this Signal chat thread, but still lots of questions around here as to how this happened and what's going to happen later, and whether or not any federal laws were violated in this information being presented on a non-secured, commercially available app, Mugo.
Right, and on the schedule for President Trump today is a closed-door meeting with Vice President J.D. Vance. So what role did the VP play in this group chat?
Yeah, this is presumably the first time the president and vice president will have an opportunity to chat about the situation if it does come up. But one of the key things that happened in this conversation, according to The Atlantic, was a debate about essentially bailing out Europe. A person who appeared to be J.D. Vance in this text thread, talking about how the U.S. military being in the region, being able to respond in this way, was bailing out Europe in large part because the belief was coming from Vance, how the this conversation was described from J.D. Vance was that the U.S. taking this move to strike essentially benefits Europe, that they're able to not necessarily play on the military world stage and counteract this terrorism essentially in the region from the Houthis in this way, to put airplanes in the air to attack the Houthis. The U.S. is doing that. Europe benefits because in large part a lot of trade by European nations goes through that part of the world. That was the argument here, and J.D. Vance apparently, according to this article, argued about delaying the attack, and there was a lengthy discussion about that. But this was certainly something that played out, should have played out behind closed doors, but we're really getting a peek inside of how debate is playing out and how the vice president thinks about foreign policy. And one of the things that I'll point out is a statement from the VP's team essentially saying that he is standing in line with the president, supports the president's priorities. But it's interesting to see the vice president on a different side, playing devil's advocate here, so to speak, in terms of how this discussion was being handled.
Yeah, and I'm sure none of this is over yet. Willie James Inman from the White House, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.